Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 161. I'm your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is Thursday, the 8th of December in the year 2022, exactly 1 month away from the best day of the year in 2023. You all may not catch that one yet, but you might eventually. So today is Thursday, and on Thursday we talk. Well, every day, no. Every day I talk, but on Thursday, hopefully, we talk. You can join the conversation over on TikTok, join the conversation in the chat. You can jump up and actually speak inside of the conversation over there on TikTok. And we're going to talk about whatever issues the chat brings up. That's what we're doing. It's a Thursday and we're just talking, chilling. Gabriel Miguel says, I like the tree. It's nice. The star leaning little bit though. Listen. With that star, just so you know, the last thing I did right before I started this live, the last thing I did was put that star back up there. That star has an uncanny habit of finding its way off of the tree. It has an uncanny way of finding itself off the tree. Nicholas Jaikaran says, have you addressed CBDC and WEF yet? You know, I sitting down here jumping in on this live talking about issues and people jumping in with letters and things like that. If I had zero idea what I was speaking about, I'm all out in the dark here. But I have spoken briefly about WEF before, and we have spoken about CBDCs slightly, but not directly like that. CBDCs would be central bank digital currencies, and WEF being the World Economic Forum. And CBDCs provide a really beautiful opportunity for the future. Central bank digital currency. So you don't ever have to have this paper money anymore. All the money can be digital. All your money can be gotten and used and spent and acquired all on a computer. No need for this cash. No one can pick your pocket. Easy. Where to access my lessons, Ismail is asking. DM me, message me. If you're talking about don't worry, Nicholas Jaikran, I'm getting to it. If you're talking about the location of the lessons, the group classes that I do are in Central, but I also do private tutoring, which is going to the location. But just message me. Wherever you see me, you can message me. I read messages. Yeah. So yes, it provides a beautiful opportunity for the future. You know, ease of doing commerce. You don't have to do the cash. You could pay for something on the opposite side of the world like that. But here's the problem. The government knows all of your money. If you are using a CBDC, the government knows every cent that you get, where you get it from, where you spend it, who you send it to. They know everything. They can control everything. Now, here's the scary thing. I am seeing Fresheras over there on Instagram talking about Canada. Over in Canada, earlier this year, some truckers did not like the decisions that the government was making with regards to the COVID-19 and their handling of the pandemic. They didn't like that, so they started to do a protest. The truckers convoy, I don't know how many of you may recall that specific incident, and they were shutting down roads, they were blowing their horns, they were shutting down border crossings, etc., etc., etc. Now, something very interesting happened during that time. The Canadian pretty boy Prime Minister declared an emergency and got the banks to freeze the truckers' money. Now, once the bank started to do that, people started to take their money out of the bank because people were like, wait. This bank would just listen to the government, whatever the government says, in a political decision. So if PNM doesn't like me and PNM controls the CBDC, they could control where and how I spend my money. That's a scary thing. And people started to notice that. And the thing is, that was using regular fiat money. That wasn't even a central bank digital currency as yet. That was regular banking where you put your money in the bank, and the bank still did that kind of nonsense. So imagine if it was a digital currency where all of your money, the money under your bed, is known. There's no unknown money. But the thing is, it's not something totally strange with how the government runs countries by and large. Our government basically does that. Listen, this business we did 2 years ago with switching over all our money on a snap, I found that to be ridiculous. But that was the real money way to do the kind of things that a central bank digital currency would have done effortlessly. Thank you very much, Serenity. I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone who notices my Christmas tree. I appreciate you. So yeah, this wasn't a digital currency. This was just government using old control methods that governments generally use. Our government just on the snap of a finger changed over all of our monetary notes. So you cannot hold money for a long period of time when these things happen. You cannot just hide away money and forget about it and find it at some later time. You cannot do that. You always have your finances are controlled by the central government. That's just the nature of that kind of thing. So when the digital currency comes along, you might be. And combining that with what Nicholas Jaikaran said over there on TikTok, bringing up the World Economic Forum, there are many people who believe that a centralized government is the better thing. There are many people who believe that the best way to govern humans is to have few people at the top telling them what to do. Many people believe that. So, the World Economic Forum, they're talking about moving away from shareholder decisions in business and moving to a stakeholder economy. Now, here's what that means. Shareholders are no, I'm not General Dupes. I am not. Shareholders are people who hold a share of a company. If I put some money into a company, I hold a share of that company. When that company is making a decision, they make decisions based on my interests because I hold a share of that company. That's the way regular business runs. What the WEF is proposing now is stakeholder capitalism, where the decisions are not just made based on the money put in, but based on the stake. Who has a stake in this? And the thing is, the people who have a stake is a very wide catchment area. So who has a stake? Good night, Richard Glubman. Who has a stake in any industry in Point Lisas? Might be all of the residents of California and Cuba and environs, and all of the citizens of Trinidad, etc., etc. Who has a stake in a business is a much wider area. Now, here's where the WEF gets a bit technical, along with the United Nations, and why certain things are interesting. The problem with stakeholders is no one is able to find out what each stakeholder thinks. So what actually happens is, to actually know the stake that everyone has in it, we need to hire experts. You want to know one word that has scared me more and more, especially in the last 2-3 years? You see that word called experts? It scares me. Not that I don't believe in expertise, or not that I don't believe people can be an expert at something. Don't they take a vote? No, they don't take a vote. It's not about voting. You see, voting takes it out of the hands of the experts. The experts can decide this. For example, there was no vote about the best thing to do during the pandemic. The experts looked at it, figured it out, and they made that decision. That is the kind of economy, that is the kind of governance that the WEF once. Part of the thing that scares me here in Trinidad and Tobago is always a blessing to see you here too, Maggie. What's up? What's up? Something that scares me here in Trinidad and Tobago for our governance is that our present government, is a government that actually believes in that kind of governance. The PNM government is a government that believes in experts. They don't believe in freedom of people and people power. That's not the general nature of the PNM. That's why the PNM generally inhibits the economy a bit more. They want an expert. They will hire an expert to research this. That's why the PNM is committee boss. The PNM has 1,000,000 committees. Good night, Chris. Yeah, you're late, but yes, you're here. The PNM has 1,000,000 committees. You see, we need to figure out, all right, there are problems inside of the hotspot communities. What we're going to do is hire a committee of experts, someone who has a PhD in this and that, and they will go in there, do up a paper, bring it to the government, and then the government will make a decision based on the opinions of the experts. The thing is, I don't actually believe that's how we should be running governance or societies. I believe in the wisdom of the crowds. The wisdom of decentralized decision making. That's what the free market basically is. So, a planned economy is the government decides how all money is spent basically in the economy, and they get the economists to best decide how to do this thing. Versus a free market. It's not about the experts or the economists. No, it's each individual person making a decision. So I go into the Chinese grocery, I look at the price of the cheese, and I say, that's not the best price for cheese, and I do not buy it. By me not buying it, it is sending a signal to the person who is selling the cheese that the cheese is too expensive. Now, each individual person, all 1.4 million of us in Trinidad and Tobago, each time we make an independent individual decision, we are as it were putting our minds together in crowdsourcing solutions for something, and that's actually what I believe is a much more effective way. The problem with experts is you centralize decision making, and I'm not even going down the side of if the experts are evil, because some of them are indeed evil, but that's not even the side we're going down. If they make a mistake, everybody dead. That's the problem with centralized decision making. One mistake where everybody has to follow that one, we all gone. It's like in a farm. It's like the difference between monocropping and multi-cropping and crop rotation. If you plant one crop, and generally, when you're planting one crop, it's probably a cloned crop. So it's literally the same plant you plant over and 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 over again. If a disease comes that is effective against one plant, it's going to wipe out your entire crop, especially if it's quickly effective. While the more variety you have, the more stable that system is. So a disease might knock out your corn, but you still have peas. All right. It's Thursday, we're talking. Experts are not always right. Look at the lies the experts told us with the fabricated COVID-19. Yes, there were lies told inside there. Okay, but different plants have different strengths. That's very true. Same with humans too. And that's exactly my point, Nicholas Jaikaran. Experts are not always right. They are not always right, so they can make errors. They are not always good, so they can be bad or evil. It could be not necessarily an error, but they're purposefully doing something for their own benefit. And I really dislike the idea some people have, like experts are infallible. If someone is so educated and so wise and they're qualified in so many various fields, then by no means this person could have bad intentions. It's still a human being. They could have just as much evil intentions as the dunce guy sitting on a corner. I don't really agree with that analogy, because even if an expert is wrong, they were informed. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to there. Ideally, they made the best decision. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. That's ideally. That's thinking idealistically. And thinking idealistically is one sure way to get in trouble in this earth. There's no way to know that for sure. There's no way to know that the expert is for sure going to make the best decision. You're hoping that an expert is best capable of making the best decision, but there's no way to know that for sure. However, regular, less informed people would make mistakes far more often. A regular, less informed person may make more mistakes, that's true. I don't understand necessarily the relevance of that. I agree. A regular person would make mistakes more regularly. And I said this at the very beginning. What I'm saying here isn't discounting expertise or knowledge or wisdom. I teach. I encourage people to learn. Get educated. Get as educated as your intelligence would allow, by all means. But what I'm saying is that sometimes we put too much weight on experts and expertise, and that's a dangerous thing. And I think when we're looking at the direction we're heading in right now as a planet, we've seen some of the problems already that could pop up and crop up when we put all that weight on experts. Do we want to be governed by a panel of experts? Is that the ideal? Would it be best if this world was run by 20 experts, really, really intelligent people, 20 of them, and they run the world? Or would you prefer the world being run generally in the way closer to the way it is now, much more decentralized and based on the group and what the group decides? Personally, I would prefer the group. So there's an idea of elitism versus what's that? Populism. Elitism versus populism, where one goes on the top performers in the society, while one is based on the regular members of the society. So there was a discussion in the United States once where one person spoke about whether they would rather the country be led by the top 50 graduates from Harvard or the first 50 people in the Boston phone book, or 50 random people in the Boston phone book. And the idea of populism is that if I pick 50 random people, they may lead the country better than if I were to go to UWI and pick out 50 of their best graduates. I'm not sure I am on the side totally of populism, where I would say that getting random people is the best way to do it. I am just on the side of balance, where we understand that someone being an expert does not make them infallible, and it doesn't make them a good person. Those two things are very important. So yes, they can make errors, they can make mistakes, and you need to be very aware of that, one. And two, they could just be plain downright evil, so you need to be aware of that too. And one of the very dangerous things, and that's what we saw starting to happen during the pandemic. Right now, Twitter is in some controversy as Elon Musk took over, and he's releasing some of the internal documents, the internal files that showed governments, particularly the US government, reaching out to social media to try and clamp down people talking about the disease and about different aspects of the disease. That's one of the dangers with that expert kind of thinking, because an expert could start to think that all other views are lesser than theirs. So as an expert, we need our expert view to be the only one held, so then we need to make sure all other views are not even seen or heard of. Censorship. I think you're taking it to an extreme elitism. Yes. Of course, I'm taking it to an extreme to show the examples. Think about it. Even Swizzle Stickman can be an expert in certain fields. Swizzle Stickman is an expert. Swizzle Stickman has a job. Listen. Before he was Swizzle Stickman, he was QRep. when I saw him on the internet, I was like, wait, that's not the taxi man. Man he's an expert at taxi driving. I'm sure if you take some other expert at some other field and put them to run a day on the Kirep-Tishagonas route and put him to run a day on the Kirep-Tishagonas route, he may end the day very likely, for all you know, it double the amount of money because he knows the tips and tricks. He's an expert at that. Okay, that's relying on one expert. That's a different matter. That's tyranny. Here's the problem with even relying on multiple experts, Reeve. And this was something that I noticed in the pandemic. People mix up expert decisions or science with politics. So people spoke during the pandemic. We heard very regularly this horrible statement. I hate this statement now. Listen to the science. Listen to the science. No. Science does not tell you what you should do. Science does not tell you what you ought to do. All science does is science supposed to show us an accurate representation of what exists in reality. What we do with that accurate representation is a political decision. And during the pandemic, we found so regularly some people were making political decisions and referring to them as science and obeying the science. While it wasn't obeying the science, it was obeying politics and using science as a cudgel. It was using science as a shield to block from legitimate criticisms against political decisions. And that happens when you put too much importance sometimes on that science level. It's very similar to the idea of God. It's not a strange thing to humankind. It's in the earlier days, in the earlier millennia, BC, times BC. They didn't use science, they used God. So they were making a political decision and they would say, well, the gods have told me that you must pay me more taxes. Thus says the gods. And they're talking about a political decision, but referring to a religious point. Similarly, political decisions here, they were making and referring to it as if it's obeying the science. Reeves says put the decision in the hands of a panel of experts. No, I do not want to put the decision in the hand of a panel of experts. I want to put the research in the hands of a panel of experts. The decision is on the individuals and the representatives that the individuals choose, not on the experts. Let's take climate change as a case study then. Thank you, Reeve. Perfect example. You see, climate change, what I studied in university was biology and environmental. Environmental is my forte. It's what I teach also. There have been environmental doomsday predictions since the 60s. It was global warming, global heating, global dimming. There were many that kept coming and kept coming. Right now, if you listen to climate change activists, you'll hear many varied numbers. Some say we have 5, some say we have 10, some say we have 30 different numbers left to live and to make these decisions change. And then look at the experts, and we'll see experts flying to a conference, to a convention. You look in the airport hangar, and there are 60 private chartered jets. Each trip in the private jet is the equivalent of the carbon footprint of a regular person living for 25 years. And these climate change experts meet there to make the decision to tell you what to do in your life. And some people somehow are convinced that because these people went to school for a longer period of time, they are going to be better at making this decision. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I understand there are selfish points in that. There are selfish positions in that. And then there is the part of who pays the piper. Here's a difficult thing with science. I studied science. Let me tell you one of the problems with science. If you go to university and you specialize in science, you are not going to make a lot of money, very likely. That's just the reality. It's going to be difficult to make a lot of money because a lot of what scientists do is not directly marketable. It's not something you could easily put out on the open market and let someone pay you for. Spending 3 years in a lab, a political scientist, funny. Spending 3 years in a lab and trying to figure something out is not how you get a lot of money. So, how do scientists make money? Well, here's the problem. Scientists make money through grants and endowments. Some rich corporation or billionaire or something is going to donate 100 million to the research facilities at the University of the West Indies. And then you look and the researcher who donated to the climate change research panel that figured out and came up with the decision that wind turbines are the ideal way to go forward into the future. You look and you follow the sponsors of their research, and what would you know? Shockingly, it's someone who just invested in wind turbines. Wow, isn't that something? So Bill Gates would come out and say, for the sake of the environment, we should stop eating meat, because he is going to pull up a paper where several experts from several panels and research think tanks all around the world have shown that the eating of beef and the cultivation of beef, etc., is doing horrible to the environment and to our carbon. Okay, right. So this research is done. He brings it out, and then strange enough, he is highly invested in Beyond Meat, in all the fake meat and plant-based meat industry. He owns a big chunk of it. He's the largest private holder of farmland in the United States. Wait, what? So he is paying a research group. The research group is finding out that the industries that he has invested in just so happen to be the best industries to make the most money. Yes, scientists can have vested interests. Yes, data manipulation can occur. Yes, academia has politics. We agree. Yes. And JY says, I ain't gonna lie, you does be on point. Thank you, JY. Fighting a little virus, attempting to get through here. But as I keep saying here, Reeve, as I keep pointing out, let it not be said that I am saying experts do not have value. If I jump into a plane, I want to know that my pilot is an expert. I do not want to go and just pick a random citizen, random George, random Harry to go fly my plane. If I go into the hospital and I have an injury, I do not want to know that my doctor is just a random guy chosen out of the country. I want an expert. So I am not disagreeing with the reality of expertise. What I am saying is we need to hold expertise at the right level. We need to see it for what it is. It is a resourceful thing. It is very helpful, but it is not the be all and end all, and it cannot tell us which decisions to make. You see, a lot of the problem in this world is the mix-up between is and ought. The mix-up between is and ought. So, what is and what ought or should be? What do we do with what is? That's the real difficulty. I think expertise really helps in figuring out what is. So what is the problem here? What is the issue? That's the expertise. So if I were to do this, what is going to happen? Experts tell me that. But what ought we to do? What should we do in this case? very often that isn't really a matter of expertise. You cannot scientifically study and figure out a roadmap of what you should do in your life or what a human should do in life. Reeve says, but how can the government straying from the ideal scientific solution be actually better? Because what is the ideal scientific solution? That is the problem right there. You see, that's where I'm pointing at. I am saying that the ideal scientific solution is very, very often a political solution that has been dressed up to look like the ideal scientific solution. Because almost never does science tell us what the solution is. Science tells us what the problem is. Science tells us what is going to react with the problem. It doesn't tell us what the solution is, because to know what the solution is, we need to know what is the outcome we want. And what is the outcome that everyone wants? Bill Gates wants an outcome where he believes the world should only have 500 million people. So the outcome he wants from his scientific solutions may be to have a world with 500 million people only, but our world has 8 billion people. Maybe there are some people who would look at the science and think the solution might be that we still have to continue replicating and pushing humanity further on. That's the only way for the human race to continue. That might be the solution that some people have. That's not a scientific solution. That's an ideological or political solution. So, climate change. Some models are saying that the Earth, well, most models, all models basically, are saying that the Earth is warming up. The thing is, the Earth always warms up, the climate always changes, the Earth is dynamic by nature, that's how we had ice ages before, etc., etc. But the problem here is anthropomorphic climate change, where the idea is humans are doing something. What we people are doing is helping to change the climate even faster. That's the point. Okay, good. How is the climate changing? Well, it's getting warmer. Okay, good. What is causing it to get warmer? Well, certain gases we are releasing are getting into the atmosphere, and when those gases get into the atmosphere, they are causing heat to be trapped in the atmosphere and warming up the Earth. Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Scientist. So what should we do about this? Well, here is where the problem lies. Some would say that let's stop eating beef, so that the cows' fats and belches would stop putting carbon into the air. And I'm not making this up. That is actually some solutions some people propose. Some people say stop oil now. There's a climate change activist group in the United Kingdom, that's their name. Stop oil now. Let's stop the production of oil tomorrow. No more oil produced, no more oil used. That's how we're going to do it. Well, the reality is, if you stop oil use tomorrow, you're going to kill off like 3 billion people instantly like that. That's what's going to happen if you stop oil tomorrow. So, again, is that the scientific solution? Is the scientific solution, as some scientists might say, stop oil tomorrow and kill off 3 billion people? Is that the scientific solution? There is not one clear scientific solution. That's the whole problem. And when deciding between which solution to choose, that's a political choice. And I really don't like when scientists attempt to browbeat us, to make us believe that a political choice is a scientific choice. And if we don't make their political choice, then somehow we are science deniers. Somehow we don't believe in science. Somehow we are backward. That's not true. That's not true. So, for example, speaking on that, this reminds me of the video I did for today over on my YouTube channel. Wendell says, I love how they want us to not eat meat when they travel in private jets. Correct. Reeve says, fair enough, Nathan. I see what you're saying. I agree with you on the stance of balance. Thank you. Thank you. That's all I say. Balance. Balance. But it reminds me of the video I did today. It was talking about morality and how we decide morality and things we take for granted. And it was following the trace around the world of how the world sees the issue of LGBTQIA2+ rights and how they view it, their opinion of that all around the world. And The starting story had to do with Sizzler. When Sizzler came down here recently for a concert he recently did, he basically let them know that he still not apologize. Rastaman don't apologize for no. If it, right, he's still on that. He's still on it. I'm not gonna apologize. And he said that that is against Caribbean culture. That's the words he used. It's something against Caribbean culture. Homosexuality doesn't fit in with Caribbean culture. And the thing is, he's right. He's right. If you're looking at culture as being determined by the majority of the people in the district and the majority of their norms and customs, well, he's right. It does not fit with the general Caribbean culture. So then you start to wonder, how do we decide morality in this way then? How can we come up with what is the right moral stance? There are two different ways we decide morality. There's the group consensus, where we all decide what the majority of us want. Well, that's going to be what is the right thing. When I say morality, morality is real simple. Morality is right and wrong, good and bad. How do we decide it? So we could decide it by consensus, the majority. What most people say, well, that's what's good. What most people don't like, well, that's what's bad. Fine. Or the way how most people have done it for the majority of humans' history is by God. Someone outside of the human experience who has an unchangeable moral code, and that is what we follow as humans. That's the two ways to do it. Now, the problem is, nearly anything with progressive morality cannot take that outside morality approach, because to have progressive morality, you need to be able to change. You need to be able to evolve with the time. That's the very idea. And for example, with things like LGBTQIA rights, so you need to evolve as these things evolve in time. The problem is, if you need to evolve, then the way you do that is by consensus, by majority opinion. And what do you do if the majority of the people think what you think is right is wrong? How could you say your thing is the right thing to do when the majority says it's wrong? What is that right thing to do based on? Some people might say human rights. Well, human rights was written in a charter in 1948 by the United Nations. That's people. That's a group of people and their opinion. Again, before that, one of the earliest versions in the Western world, the Magna Carta in the 1st century, King John, was it? Again, humans. Earlier than that, some of the first, I think the first written human code that had something like human rights, Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great, way back, Persian emperor, still written by humans. So, what do you use to decide which one is the right one? J.R.Y. says, I learned don't expect people to be moral in instances where you would have been moral to them. Well, yeah, you can't expect morality of other people because you are moral. That's not the way it works. And in that story, I was going through several cases around the world. Russia just passed a law banning all LGBTQ propaganda. That's the way they called it. I know for sure you can't you can't make those modern Netflix movies now in Russia, because they're saying they want nothing that suggests, promotes any kind of LGBTQ behavior or lifestyle. China did it before them, as Fresh Air has said. Japan is a very progressive country. Japan is what? The top 3? Or in the top 5 of the economies in the world. Recently, in the capital city of Japan, Tokyo, they upheld Japan's ban on same-sex marriage. No, you can't do it. No, sorry. You're banned. In Japan, morality. And you could add into that recently Indonesia. And they went even a step further. They aren't just banning same sex. They're telling you no sex. If you want that, go marry the person. Indonesia passed a law where unmarried people are forbidden from intercourse. You can't even live together. You're talking about moving with the man to, you know, test drive and know if you could live with him. You can't marry the man without moving in with the man. Well, you have to do that out there in Indonesia because they aren't playing that. You're going to jail for a year. And the thing is, Indonesia isn't only passing that law for their own locals. If you want to be a tourist and go to Indonesia, go with your wife. Wendell says every country is only sovereign when they agree with the West agenda. Qatar said no LGBT colors for matches. Yes, I saw that. And the thing with Qatar, what Qatar showed is that money is king. Money is king. Listen, you wanna bet if a small country like Trinidad, well, Trinidad has some oil, so we could have some weight, but probably like us, who doesn't have as much money to throw around the world. If we attempted to host something and kick out anything bearing the rainbow colors, they would have mashed us into the ground. That was the end of Trinidad. But Qatar let them know, no rainbows here. The only way you're seeing a rainbow is after the rain falls, and Qatar is in the desert, so no rain is falling here. No rainbows. And the world said, we don't like it, but what we could do? Money. That's what that is. You want to know why Qatar was able to do that? Money. We said no rainbows, but Qatar, but Qatar, take that and shove a word down inside their mouth. Hush your mouth. Money does it. Strange. Money does it. All right. The flu symptoms are trying to take me over here. Any further comments or questions on this lovely Tuesday talk evening, or can I dive out and go rest? Anything further, folks? Nisi asks, they're putting police in those bedrooms. Well, many of the times, the way how many of those things happen in societies, Nisi, is many of those societies are conservative in the first place. So, your neighbor will sell you out for the most part. They don't need to put a police if you have enough fast neighbors who would call the police for it. Who would call the police if you do something like that. What's your views on transgenders? You're trying to get me in trouble here, CJ Alexander. My views on transgenders. I think if a man cuts off his genitals, he has a legitimate mental issue. I don't think that these people are faking. That's how I'd put it. I don't think that these people are faking. I think many of them have legitimate issues. Now, there are several problems with that. Transgender dysphoria, which is the basis of transgenderism, has existed for a long time. But there are several problems with the present incarnation of gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria typically was vast majority men, young men. Now, transgenderism is majority women, young women, girls. The problem being that girls have a kind of group psyche. So, for example, in the 2000s, earlys, there was a Ouija board, something that went around through schools, and a set of schoolgirls were getting possessed all around. And in the later 2000s there was cutting, where a lot of people started cutting themselves. A lot of girls got into the cutting. In the late 90s, around that time, there was the emo style where everyone wore black, and that many girls did it. So because of the nature of the female puberty, there are certain things that they are more susceptible to, and I think this is obviously showing itself to be one, because there are several classes in schools where the entire class of girls have all become transgender. Now, part of the real stress with that on girls is if they make several decisions about that now, they stand the chance of becoming infertile further on in their life, which is a horrible thing to do with children. So, all right, my opinion on transgenders. I think if someone has a mental issue, you try to fix their brain. You don't try to change the body to make the body line up with what the brain is misfiring about. If someone is anorexic, they look at themselves in the mirror and see a fat person, regardless of how much they starve themselves. Well, we don't starve them more for their brain to feel more comfortable about themselves. If someone has limb dysphoria, so there are some people who have they have their right hand, and for some reason they feel like this right hand doesn't feel like mine. I don't think the right thing to do is cut off their hand. I think the right thing to do is give them some mental help. And statistically, it seems to show that the surgeries, etc., involved in transgenderism do not help with the severe downsides of gender dysphoria. There's a seat in school now. I'm not surprised. Fresh Russ was saying, and no one is talking about the suicide numbers among transgenders who realized they made the mistake they made. Yes, and the numbers don't decrease after surgery. In fact, 7 years after surgery is the highest point of self-deletion for transgender individual. But I think this is in line with a topic I was talking about, was that last night or night before, when we were discussing several issues. And I noticed in the modern system, it seems like instead of trying to get people to make the right decisions so that they don't have to face the bad consequences, we're trying to tell people they can make any decision they want, and then we're trying to bend over backwards as humanity, as mankind, to try and undo all the negative consequences of bad decisions. I think, personally, my view on these things is you go at the start with the actions. The thing is, it's harder to do because it requires discipline. It requires self-control. It requires telling people, or telling people under your control, that this is right, this is wrong, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. And many people in the modern world, like, they're allergic to that kind of thing. But I think that is better than trying to tell them afterwards that, okay, let's try to figure out a way to undo the consequences, when a lot of the consequences are irreversible. And sometimes in attempting to undo the consequences, we just make it worse anyhow. All right. I think that's all I have for now, folks. Thank you all for tuning in. It was nice as per usual. I enjoy this. CJ says, what's the problem for me is the forced implementation of it onto the minors. Well, it's not forced onto minors. The thing is, minors are very malleable. You could suggest a lot of things to minors. There are people who convince their minors to go become martyrs for a cause. You could convince a minor to be a suicide bomber. So minors, it's not like minors are immune to outside influence. So I don't think such things should be involved with minors, especially if it's not with the parents' approval. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you in the next Mindful Live session, which is going to be tomorrow evening, Friday, at 9:15 to 9:30 starting time, thereabouts. You could tune in around that kind of time. Be alive, 9:15 to 9:30, somewhere thereabouts. I will jump in and we will be here for the next Mindful Live session. It's always a pleasure. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can head over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer, over there on YouTube, where you could catch all the rest of the Mindful Lives. It is Mindful Live 161, so yes, there are other lives behind this. that you can catch on my YouTube channel, Nathan Spring over there. There are also videos regularly put out, mostly daily basis. You can catch them there if you are interested in catching some lessons. I teach music, we teach mindful education. We have tutors for most CXC and CAPE subjects if you are interested in private tutoring one-on-one. If you are interested in the group classes, pod learning pods, small homeschool style classes with 6 students approximately, and intimate knowledge with their teachers and knowing their fellow students, so they are much more comfortable in that learning environment. Hit us up, Mindful Education, over there on Instagram. Wherever you see me, message me if you are interested in such. Until tomorrow, folks, see y'all then. Peace. It was nice.